Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, emotionally, because of terrorism and the attacks on 9/11 and the attacks in Brussels and things that we're hearing, emotionally, you just want to say, well, throw them all in jail and put them all in jail and throw away the key. But that's not how we're supposed to work as a nation. That's not what we stand for. And I don't believe that we should abandon our principles if we can still be safe. I would say that things are a trade-off. I wouldn't be for abandoning our principles if it meant that there was going to be a larger chance of being unsafe as a result of releasing or transferring some of these people. But when you read the facts and you look at the facts, you see that it's really worse by keeping them there, if you have a balance sheet. Now, I'm not for releasing anybody who was guilty, but I'm also not for keeping people in prison year after year after year after year with no trial. That's not what I learned when I was in grade school about one of the reasons why this country is so great. Opponents of closing the Guantanamo detention facility often say that the people currently in the prison are the worst of the worst or the most dangerous, and that's why we should not release them at all. Some critics point to risk assessments from the previous administration, from the Bush administration, in support of this claim. What's your view of how risk assessments have been conducted by the Interagency Task Force and the Periodic Review Boards compared with previous risk assessments? And given what you know about detainees currently held at Guantanamo, are they really the most dangerous? And if not, why have they been in Guantanamo for so long? Is it because we've already transferred all the easy cases? Explain how these people are vis-a-vis cases that have already been adjudicated.
Sure. Thank you, Congressman, for the question. It's certainly the case that there are some extremely dangerous individuals who remain in Guantanamo, but it's also the case that there are individuals in Guantanamo who are not extremely dangerous. Of the 36 that are currently approved for transfer, 29 are Yemeni nationals, and of course we've been unable to return them to Yemen. Returning them to the country of origin is always our first choice in removing a Guantanamo detainee from Guantanamo. So there is a significant component of country of origin that goes into the remaining detainee population and why they are still there. With respect to your first question, it sort of bleeds into the re-engagement issues that the Chairman raised, which I appreciate the opportunity to address, because we actually do have hard data on re-engagement, and I'd like to refer you to the numbers in the report issued by the Office of Director of National Intelligence earlier this month on re-engagement. The actual numbers are, in this administration, 7 confirmed re-engagement former detainees. In the previous administration, 111. 7 in this administration out of 144 transferred. That translates into 4.9%. The number for the previous administration is 111 out of 532, which translates into 20.9%. We believe that this data affirms that the procedures that we have put in place during this administration have worked to substantially reduce any re-engagement concerns. And I also think that you're exactly right when you indicated in your opening statement that the risks of transferring detainees, and we've acknowledged that there are risks, must be weighed against the risks of keeping the facility open. There has been, until recently, a bipartisan consensus that there are significant national security and foreign policy risks associated with keeping the facility open. that was articulated by the previous president, who transferred over 500 detainees out of Guantanamo in furtherance of his effort to close Guantanamo because he recognized that it was a propaganda tool. The conclusion was also reached by nonpartisan military leaders across the services. So I think that when we talk, and I'll stop speaking in a moment, when we talk about re-engagement, it is important to refer to the actual data that has been put forward by the Director of National Intelligence.
Well, let me ask you, who's left at Guantanamo? Is it correct that 91 individuals, of the 91 individuals who remain at Guantanamo, 81 are not facing criminal charges? Is that true? And is it also correct that 35 individuals have been cleared for transfer out of Guantanamo? So what does that mean to be transferred out? Who decides? How long have they been cleared for transfer? And why are they still waiting to leave?
Thank you for your question. There are 91 detainees in Guantanamo. 36 have been approved for transfer. Some of them have been approved for transfer since 2010, some of them more recently. 10 have been, are in some proportion, some stage of the military commission process, either facing charges or serving sentences. And the remainder, 40 some odd detainees, are neither approved for transfer nor currently facing charges.
Can I, Mr. Chairman, if you just indulge me, I just want to quickly ask a federal court question, because the administration's plan calls for some Guantanamo detainees to be tried in the U.S. federal courts, and Congress has imposed a ban on transferring any Guantanamo detainees to the U.S. for any reason, including for trial. But from what I can see, federal courts have been extremely effective at trying terrorism cases. Since 9/11, federal courts have convicted over 500 people on terrorism-related offenses, and by contrast, the 9/11 Military Commission trial has been in pretrial hearings since 2012. So the trial itself is not expected to start until 2020. So why have the federal courts, in your opinion, been so much more effective at bringing these terrorists to justice?
Well, the federal courts are a proven mechanism for both convicting and then making sure that convicted felons serve time safely and responsibly. You're right. There are numerous terrorists who have been effectively convicted and are now serving time in the federal prison system. Faisal Shahzad, the Times Square bomber, Richard Reed, the shoe bomber, Mr. Tsarnaev, the Boston Marathon bomber, Moussaoui. The list goes on. They all have been held safely and securely. Back to the point that the Chairman raised about Mr. Al-Kosi, I should point out that he was released from the custody of the United States after serving his military commission sentence. So he is an example of someone who went through the military commission system, was pled guilty to material support and conspiracy, and then after he served his sentence in that system, he was released. If he were put through the Article III system, he would probably still be serving his sentence and not be off doing what he's been doing.
If I could, we're talking about two different sets of numbers, so if I could just address that quickly before we go to the next member. In terms